Hey, this is Jeff Dornick, co-founder of the American Conservative Movement. We are an organization seeking to unify conservatives across this great country to defend our constitutional rights that are being systematically stripped away by our authoritarian government. Please visit AmericanConservativeMovement.com and join the thousands of conservatives across this country who have signed up for our email list. Let's take back our country.
We must never forget that no government schemes are going to perfect man. We know that living in this world means dealing with what philosophers would call the phenomenology of evil, or as theologians would put it, the doctrine of sin. There is sin and evil in the world, and we're enjoined by Scripture and the Lord Jesus to oppose it with all our might.
Coming to you from the epicenter of the Constitution ablaze, this is the America Held Hostage podcast, America's economy on life support. Now here's your host, John Hinton.
Welcome to the Memorial Day edition of the America Held Hostage podcast on the Freedom First podcast network. We're glad to be bringing you commentary from a constitutional, conservative, and Christian worldview for the first time on the Freedom First network, as we've moved over from the GK Podcast Network, but you can still find us at all the same places on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play. You can also find us on Facebook. Look on Facebook, Google Freedom First Network, or search for it in the search bar, and you'll be able to find our digital hub there as we build from the ground up. We'll be launching a website in the next couple weeks, and we're going to be rolling out a huge number of hosts in the next couple days as well, as we begin to take back America in a constitutional, conservative worldview. Before we get started, hope that you're having a great Memorial Day as you're listening to this all across the fruited plain. And it's my pleasure to bring on our special guest for the first time, the founder, one of the co-founders of the American Conservative Movement, and the editor-in-chief at Knock Report, NOQReport.com, J.D. Rucker. J.D., good to have you on the America Held Hostage podcast for the first time. How are you doing?
John, it is an absolute honor to be here.
You're coming from the People's Republic of California, where you are in quarantine. I'm in the communist dictatorship known as New Jersey. So, as one Christian brother to another, I feel your pain where you are. You may be on the left coast, I may be out here on the East Coast, but we're both having to put up with too many leftist, pagan, totalitarian tyrants that are drunk with power and are sipping the wine of Satan himself.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So, you know how this goes, and so do our listeners. We go through a digital stack of stuff. We talk about 8 to 10 stories from the weekend on a Monday, recap those, look at them through a Christian, constitutional, and conservative worldview. So the first story that I wanted to get to from Fox2Detroit.com. So there was a viral video that went out last weekend, or even last week, I should say, that there was an African-American man in his early to mid-20s that was punching elderly people in a Detroit area nursing home. Come to find out, the nursing home said this was a worker, but he was a patient who beat an elderly man at this Detroit nursing home because the 20-year-old man who assaulted these elderly gentlemen was there in quarantine after testing positive for COVID-19. He left them a bloody mess. We'll link to this story in the show notes. But if you saw the viral video of the two people that he recorded himself on his cell phone beating, it was absolutely appalling and demonic beyond all nature of paganism. I could not believe what I was watching. What did you think of that? And the fact that He was actually there as a patient in lockdown.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head when you say that it's demonic. So this gentleman, his father's come out and said, look, this guy should never have been there. Had I known, I would have called about it. He's had behavioral issues his entire life. Clearly, mental illness is involved. People don't just, I don't care how angry or whatever you are, you don't go around and just start beating on people randomly, especially in a facility like that, especially somebody who is 57 years older than you. Now, keep in mind, one of the things about this story, if you do watch the video, and I'm not recommending people watch the video, it is very disturbing. But if you do, look at the guy's eyes. Look at this gentleman's expression. I mean, there's nothing there. And I'm a firm believer that when we see things like this, when we hear of these crazy, inexplicable stories of violence, of rage, of whatever, a lot of it is there's at least some rationale to it. People get drunk or something and they fight each other. This was nothing like that. This is, I think that this is demonic. And there's something that can be said about, like you said, he had COVID-19. This is a gentleman he has videos of himself at the local gym where he trains as a boxer. Now, the gym itself, they have said, look, we never trained this guy. He wasn't part of our youth program. Yes, he's a member, but we didn't know he was doing this stuff. Bottom line, you want to look for answers when you see things like this happening. And to me, there is no answer. I mean, this was evil personified into a human being taking out something on another human being. And again, if you look in his eyes, there's no malice there. There's no anger. His eyes are dead. He's just going through the motions, and it's almost, I would almost rather he have been some, really upset and, whatever. But when they're kind of crazy like that, that's even more scary because you never know. I mean, if they're letting him into nursing homes, letting him work in nursing homes, what does that tell you about the system?
I think it tells you that the system that we have is very corrupt. It's very dirty, and because it's filled with government money, there's not really a care for people. These are, as I said in a previous podcast with Uncle Freight Train and my father last week, and you can hear that on iTunes. That's the Wednesday podcast of last week's America Held Hostage. I told both of those gentlemen that if we don't care about lives coming into the world, those are the same people that now are turning around and saying we don't care about lives that are getting ready to exit the world. So it is Satan comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And what you're seeing is they don't care about killing grandma. They don't care about stealing your joy or stealing your quality of life. And they don't care about destroying the last vestiges of what made America great in the first place. And that is individual autonomy, individual liberty, your God-given declarational rights, not just constitutional rights. We always go to the Bill of Rights and the first 10 amendments. What I'm talking about is even higher than that, is the declarational rights found in the Declaration of Independence that are inherent within men, given to you by Almighty God, that are based on the laws of nature and nature's God, which include life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And in this story, what you're seeing is an attack on all of that. And it's a reflection of the culture where it is right now and where it continues to decay and just continue to exacerbate itself. It's in display in that one story, JD.
Oh, absolutely. It definitely is. And like I said, there are times when we can justify things. This was not justifiable. We can't see any reason for this to happen. So it is incumbent on us. Obviously, we need to pray for the victims, and we need to hope that this has been limited to, there's now 2 known victims. Hopefully there aren't others, dozens perhaps, out there. Hopefully that's not the case. But we also need to pray for him because he clearly has some sort of force, whether it's internalized, whether it just is pure mental illness, or whether there's something demonic happening there. we need to pray for everybody involved, and the nursing home and the gym. It's very important. I am appalled by this, but I am heartened by the fact that I hear that you actually had a guest on the show named Uncle Freight Train, and that itself is awesome.
Yeah, and we also had JJ Knight on, and he talked about the fact that one of the things that we need to watch out for coming out of these lockdowns and the COVID-19 self-quarantine and stay-at-home orders is the fact that there's going to be a rise in the lashing out due to mental health disorders and also demonic oppression, and
Yeah.
that it's something that we need to pray against. We need to stand against, and people that are in places of influence, whether they be in local government, whether they be in healthcare facilities, you can't just turn a blind eye to these things. You have to shine a light into the darkness, because when a light is shined into the darkness flees. I'm reminded of the great quote by Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the great martyr in a Nazi concentration camp in Nazi Germany in World War II. Pastor Bonhoeffer said, "Silence in the face of evil is evil itself. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to act is to act. Not to speak is to speak." And I think that when it comes to standing up against any type of tyranny or oppression, whether it's in a nursing home or whether it's in your halls of elected government, wherever there is darkness and evil that is residing, it's incumbent upon the people of God and upon people who believe in those constitutional and conservative principles that are espoused in Scripture to stand up and say, "This is wrong," and be like a Martin Luther. "Here I stand, I can do no other." You're not going to do this anymore. We need more of that, not less.
Absolutely, we are to be watchmen, and let's do that.
A watchman that has been in government for years is Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, and he has been making a remarkable stand when it comes to the unmasking of General Flynn. So I wanted to share this story from the digital stack of stuff. So James Woods on Twitter said, "This was a remarkable libertarian, quietly but forcefully standing his ground, protecting our constitutional rights. Senator Rand Paul is a good man." What he said on Twitter was, unmasking essentially is an end around, or is an end around the Constitution. The lesson that we should all be taking away from this is not my political opponent should not be able to spy on me without a warrant. The lesson should be that no one should be allowed to spy on me without a warrant. And I would say that's absolutely right. I think that what happened when Edward Snowden exposed what was happening in the NSA, people said, "Well, I'm not doing anything wrong. I don't really care if they're listening." No, fundamentally, that is a violation of your Fourth Amendment constitutional rights. No illegal search or seizure without due process of law. You're not allowed to be searched by the government unless they have a warrant. And now we're abusing the FISA warrants just to be able to do these things. I think FISA needs to be dismantled. There needs to not only be term limits in Congress, we need bureaucratic deep state limits as well. These people need to be thrown out after 5 years in office. We need to get rid of lobbyists and all the dark money that's happening, and need to start prosecuting the people that have done these types of things. The Andrew McCabe's, the James Comeys, the John Brennans, the James Clappers, all these people that did these wickedness in high places, they need to be held to account. And not just the Democrats. If it happened in the Republican Party too, like insider trading with Richard Burr, the senator from North Carolina, or Senator Kelly Loeffler of Georgia, if you're going to hold the left to this standard, you've got to hold the right to the same standard. And those are the principles which says, okay, if we're not going to hold you to account, I'm looking forward to a good tar and feathering, JD. What do you say?
Absolutely. So there's a lot to unpack there. As far as holding, we'll work it in reverse. As far as holding everybody accountable, absolutely. People will say, this, that, or the other about Clapper, Comey. Great, I agree. They use their power and abuse their power to try to make political gains. And the same thing can be said with the previous administration. We can look at people like Dick Cheney, look at people like Donald Rumsfeld, John Bolton, even. So you're absolutely right. There needs to be accountability. Now, as far as you'd mentioned term limits in the Senate and then essentially declawing the deep state by limiting the amount of time that these deep staters are allowed to participate. I don't know if 5 years is a correct number. I think that for certain positions, it can be 2 years. For other positions, it should be maybe perhaps 6 to 8 years, only because the transition can be difficult. And if you make it every 5 years, you're falling into there's a little bit of a trap there. And I'm not talking now FBI. Hey, I think the FBI director should be on a 2 to 4 year rotation max. You look at, but like, for example, in certain, that's a rabbit hole. Bottom line is, I agree with you in spirit, and absolutely when it comes to Congress, Senate, across the board, we definitely need some term limits, because right now, if you're on a 2 year term, there's a reason why some congressmen have won literally 20 elections. If they're on a 2 year term, and it takes about a year of campaigning, that means they're only technically working for about a year, half the time that they're there. The rest of the time campaigning, and it's a scourge. Back to the core of this story, though. So what Senator Rand Paul was saying is 100% correct. So, he's saying, look, everybody's making a big deal out of this because, Michael Flynn was working for President Trump, and, they were going up against him because he was a political foe, and that's wrong. And while they are correct in saying that, what Rand Paul is saying is, look, these FISA warrants, they're not intended to be used against domestic citizens of the United States. Okay, it doesn't matter whether it was political or not. We should be concerned about the fact that there was no warrant issued. There should not have been an unmasking, not because there was because of the political aspect of it, but because there was no just cause. Keep in mind, with the way the FISA laws are written, which are bad enough. Yeah. Okay, it's bad enough if they're abiding by the FISA laws. That's already terrible. But they're actually taking the FISA laws and then abusing those. There was no credible reason for him to be unmasked. We've learned this now. We've learned that James Comey basically said, he told President Obama, Joe Biden, Sally Yates, Susan Rice, he told all of them that, look, we really don't have anything on General Flynn other than that we know that he's been talking to the Russian ambassador often. That's literally all they had. And that is not grounds for unmasking. I don't care if you're General Flynn. I don't care if you are a bus driver in Hoboken. Okay, you're in New Jersey, in Hoboken. Who wants to be a bus driver in Hoboken? Not with Governor Murphy in place. But
right.
The point being that we're looking at this from a perspective of it's against Trump. It's against Trump. It's against Flynn. It was against Flynn. What Senator Rand Paul is saying is this was against America, and we need to be addressing this issue from that perspective. It's not just about the politics involved. This is about people's rights being trampled on a regular basis. This got all the attention. What about the FISA warrants that didn't get the attention? What about the unmaskings that we don't know about? He does. And he's attacking those, and right on him. James Woods, great actor, better conservative, and he is right on when he says that Rand Paul is a great guy.
I've said it in a previous podcast, JD, and I'll say it with you. I believe Obama ordered the Code Red. Thank you, A Few Good Men. Great movie. I think he ordered the Code Red on General Flynn because I think Flynn knew that where bodies were buried in the previous administration, and he was telling Trump inside info when he was a threat. Remember that Trump came out in January 2017 in the transition before the inauguration and said he had been wiretapped. The media said, that's not true. How could you accuse the Obama administration of doing that? You have no proof. Now we find out that they did this to George Papadopoulos, to Carter Page, and to General Michael Flynn. And then they threatened Flynn with prosecuting his son. That's extortion.
Yeah.
So, and those are not the only three. I talked about Adam Housley, former chief investigative reporter for Fox News. He's a great follow on Twitter, but he has said that this goes back years and administrations. We're talking about thousands of unmaskings that have occurred that have violated the civil liberties of law-abiding Americans, and that those go back to the Bush administration because the FISA courts started under the Patriot Act passed after 9/11 2001. I think that there's a lot of deep-seated dirt that is here, and it's going to be exposed the further and further we go. My prayer is that the new head of the DNI, the Department of National Intelligence, Representative John Ratcliffe, will continue to bring about the exposure that Ambassador Richard Grenell has done, because obviously Grenell knows where the bodies are buried, but he doesn't have a lot of stuff held on him, so he can just say, I think he's playing he's playing a poker game, and he's bluffing the other side. You have nothing on me. I can expose it all. And I think that you can't defeat leftists when they're not afraid of leverage. That's the
Right.
only way that you can move the left away from you. When it's hardcore pagan leftists, the only thing they respect is leverage. If you burn me down, I'm not just going to sit back and take it like a Mitch McConnell. You burn me down, I'm going to burn you down too. And I think Trump is a threat to that in the one way that he's a Samson. He's willing to whip some pagans with the jawbone of an ass.
That's awesome. I don't think I've heard that analogy before. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's the crazy eye level of Trump, and I think that that's why they're so hell bent on getting him out of office, because he plays by their rules and goes after them, and they don't know what to do with that. Well, you're going to demagogue evangelical Christians and blame them, like the front page of the Washington Post and the New York Times, for the reopening after the COVID-19 lockdowns. Well, then I'll just troll you at the White House press conference and say churches are essential and you need to reopen. And if you don't, well, I'm going to put my press secretary on you and then say, I can't believe that the media wants to keep these churches closed. It's like they hate Christians. And then they lose their poop. JD, they absolutely lose their poop. Like, we just want to make sure it's safe. No. Trump's a threat to your way of life because you're afraid of the hypocrisy he's going to expose. And two, you don't want Kayleigh McEnany to say those things because secretly, deep down, you hate flyover country, and you wish you didn't have to go out to Iowa for the Iowa caucuses because you think it's backwoods. And just like a New York Times reporter said last January, I wish that I could not have to drive 90 miles to get a latte. I can't, JD. I can't with that.
Yeah. Well, I can understand the latte sentiment, but other than that, you're absolutely right.
Now, another story that I wanted to get to, because you're in California, I'm in New Jersey, and if we're having any personal interactions with people that are getting fed up in hardcore blue states, I'm wondering what's going to be happening this fall. Katie Pavlich, townhall.com, she wrote, "A red wave coming, GOP sweeps election in Virginia Democratic stronghold." Now, the first California turn of a blue-held district, that was District 25, that turned from Katie Hill, the Thruple representative, back to the Republicans. Now, what we didn't know was that was actually a Republican-held seat for years before that, but still, that was a district that Clinton had won by 7 points, and this person won by 16. When I look at this story from Town Hall, they're talking about There were special congressional elections in California and Wisconsin that yielded Republican victors. But as stunning as that was, there's been a shocking blowout in Virginia city councils that have given Democrats reasons to be alarmed. It says, like many cities in Virginia over the last several years, the town of Staunton, Virginia, has trended towards liberal candidates in national and municipal elections. The city also helped buoy Democrat governors Terry McAuliffe and Ralph Northam to victory. But following the 2019 blue wave, they're seeing that 3 Democratic council members lost to their Republican challengers last week in an unprecedented sweep with voter turnout that smashed previous election cycles. More than 17,000 votes were cast for 4 council members vying to protect their seats. The last election, all 4 members in 2016, only 7,000 votes were cast. One political analyst, Chris Graham of the Augusta Free Press, said, "The results were stunning almost beyond words." Now, with my own personal interactions here in New Jersey, I'm seeing that underneath the surface, in places that I am meeting people at, there is a lot of animosity and a lot of hostility towards our communistic governor, and the fact that he's walking in lockstep with Mayor Bill de Blasio and also Governor Andrew Cuomo. And he's taking a lot of flack. I know that Jeff has seen the same thing. Jeff Dornick, co-founder of the American Conservative Movement and the GK Podcast Network, and also Freedom First Network, but former co-host here on the podcast. But he said the same thing. I wonder what your thoughts are on this story from Town Hall and Katie Pavlich, but also your personal, I would say, analysis and insight. Do you think that there is a red wave silent backlash that is coming this fall, even in spite of the lockdowns and the unemployment? Because I think people want their way of life back.
So the unpopular answer, which I believe is the truth, is that there is absolutely no way to know. This is a day-to-day affair. How people feel the sentiment is going to be determined by what is affecting them in their lives at that particular moment. So this particular one, we're talking about, the perfect timing. I'm not poo-pooing on this victory. This was huge. Okay, this was the turnout was astounding. Okay, in this blue-leaning city, this blue-leaning district, but Governor Northam had just come off of his latest round of draconian mandates, regarding face masks. You have people that are currently suffering, and generally speaking, people who are suffering will look at the current administration, whether it's at the city, state, local, county, or federal level, and start to assign blame unless they're told otherwise. Okay. So the point I'm trying to make is that following the blue wave in Virginia that gave them control, they already had control of the governor's mansion. That gave them control of the legislature and enabled them to start pushing very democratic, very leftist, very progressive policies. This could be an isolated backlash. Now, keep something in mind. When I say this, I am hedging my bets because all of the indicators at this point, to me, when I analyze it, I'm looking at 39 districts across this nation that I believe can be turned. Okay, 39 districts that can go from blue to red, which is more than enough to get the Republicans control of the House. But again, there's the X factor of what's going to happen with the coronavirus, what's going to happen with lockdowns, what's going to happen with the narrative, what's going to happen between now and then. Too many variables to say, we're looking in good shape. As of today, things are looking very good for the Republican Party, even here in California. Okay, I'd say there's 9 districts, including, I counted in my original analysis, I included California 25 as one that I thought would go red. So we're one for one so far. Now 8 more to go. The one district out here that I believe it's 51 that I thought had a chance of going from red to blue didn't, or it doesn't look like it's going to. So I would say that we're going to maintain that one. So then you look at the Senate. You've got at least 4, if not 5 or 6 Senate seats that are, I believe, in jeopardy. Okay, right now the Republicans have a 53 to 47 advantage over the Democrats. We have the majority. Mitch McConnell is still Senate Majority Leader, but there you've got, pardon me, you've got Martha McSally in Arizona. You've got Tom Tillis in North Carolina. You have Susan Collins up in Maine, Gardner in Colorado. These are all very vulnerable seats in the Senate. Now, granted, we're probably going to get, Tommy Tuberville is probably going to defeat, first he'll likely defeat Jeff Sessions next month, and then he's also probably going to defeat Doug Jones. So we got a pickup. So now we're up 54 going into the election. We're up 54 to 46, right? We can't afford to lose anything because as important as the House of Representatives is, believe me, I want to see Nancy Pelosi out. I desperately want to see Nancy Pelosi out. But without the Senate, if President Trump wins re-election and the Democrats have control of the House and the Senate, it's the next at least 2 years will be all about impeachment. That's it. That's all there will be.
Another impeachment.
Absolutely. Okay. All they wanted, if they win this, think about this, they've been unhinged because he beat Hillary Clinton. Now, what happens if he wins again, especially following the coronavirus? Pelosi's already starting to have hearings trying to get the coronavirus impeachment going. Now, imagine President Trump wins again, but she maintains her speakership. We don't win back majority in the House, and God forbid we also lose control of the Senate. It'll be 2 years of straight up 100% impeachment. They will look at it as a clock. Okay, they'll say, okay, so we've got to get it done in 2 years. We've got to make it decisive, and then we got to get into defensive mode to justify our actions because then we've got another election in 2022. There are so many dynamics here. As much, I love Katie Patwick, by the way. She's brilliant. I like her analysis, but anytime you hear anything, whether it's a poll that says Joe Biden's up by 14 points or some analysis that says that these districts are going to go blue and these districts are going to go red and this Senate seat is up for grabs. Listen, I'm the first to tell you right now, nobody has any idea. There's too much time to happen. It's kind of like saying, okay, you're going to hit the golf ball, and as soon as the golf ball's in the air, you're going to know exactly where it's going to land. That's the type of accuracy that would be required. But then you throw in the coronavirus, which is like a 80-mile-per-hour wind that's swirling around, okay? We can't tell. We don't know what's going to happen. At this point, I am encouraged, but we have to keep fighting. The narrative is against us right now.
Wanted to play this clip for you. Rachel Maddow, of all people, has had enough with the coronavirus, the lockdowns, everything. Even a broken clock can be right twice a day. So I want you to hear this.
It has no meaning. All days of the week are just days that end in Y now. I haven't tied my shoes in weeks. So why not spread the Rachel Maddow show out into 90 minutes instead of an hour on a Friday night? Who are you going to complain to? The boss? I mean, the boss at this point is just like any of us. The boss is just another, 1.5-inch tall head in a tiny Zoom box that sometimes cuts out in the middle of the meeting, especially when he's talking. I mean, it's anarchy at this point. So, thanks for being here tonight for this hour and a half.
I thought that was absolutely hilarious because she's in Manhattan and she is literally busting at the seams and breaking down on live cable TV.
Yeah. I would say it's probably at least partially an act because she's making fun of the boss being small. And but they don't, this is MSNBC. This is a major news channel. Okay. They made a decision to go 90 minutes. Why? Because they have been hemorrhaging viewers. They were hemorrhaging viewers before the coronavirus, and they've been hemorrhaging viewers afterwards. And right now they are in an effort to try to save face because Hannity has been beating her for literally a year now. Okay, not even close, and it's not getting better. So they're pushing. She is still a relatively popular show for them. They have to use that to their advantage. She's the only one that's getting any real national notoriety. on a regular basis. So why not? What do they have to lose at this point? Give her an extra 30 minutes. Now, the sentiment of what she said, I mean, you're like you said, a clock is right. A broken clock is right twice a day. She is right. The days are blending together. And I think in that regard, she's appealing to the people. She is frustrated. MSNBC is frustrated. The people are frustrated. Everybody's frustrated except for, maybe bankruptcy attorneys. And, that's about it. They're the only ones that are happy about all this. Of course, there's the whole New World Order, the deep state. They're ecstatic. And of course, Joe Biden's campaign is ecstatic because the coronavirus limits how much exposure he has with the media. Anytime he goes in the media, it's a debacle. So there's that too. I am not a big Rachel Maddow fan, but at least in this regard, it's I can feel for her. If it wasn't an act, if she's just losing it, if she really is just this frustrated and pushing her show like that, so then hey, we should pray for her too.
Tweets by Adam Housley. So he said, what's frustrating for many of us who are reporting on the COVID-19 unmasking FBI debacle is just wanting truth is now considered to be politicized. If media and people think it benefits Trump, well, then we're MAGA. If it doesn't, then we're part of the left-wing media. It gets old. All of you labelers should be ashamed. He kept going. He said, before I left Fox, I was told that the intelligence agencies, depending on which one, have someone at every major news outlet, either by payroll, by choice, or not. It makes sense whether you agree or not. It wasn't a surprise to me, but it was a surprise that someone admitted it to me. He said, when it comes to people who are talking about... someone said, I'm still laughing at all these bullet points on Flynn that were utterly destroyed. It shows how crazy people like Adam Housley are, because straight journalists can't just report the facts without spin, so I have to hunt for it elsewhere. And he said, well, those journalists are either A, ignorant of facts, and too lazy to actually do the simple research readily available, or B, they're blatantly lying and attempting to write history and push an agenda using a false narrative. I think it's B. I think that's absolutely true. The last tweet before I get your thoughts on all these. He said, I'm told that Wray's investigation has a lot to do with John Durham using a bunch more resources, because if you didn't hear, on Friday, FBI Director Christopher Wray said that he's launching an internal investigation into the happenings on with General Michael Flynn and the unmasking. But Adam Housley says that I'm told Wray's investigation has a lot more to do with Inspector General John Durham using a bunch more resources in the DOJ, which has Wray concerned that he can't toe the establishment line anymore.
They are fascinating, and they are very insightful. And that last one in particular, it's funny because you'd mentioned earlier about George Papadopoulos. I have been meaning to reach out to him and talk to him about this, because what Adam Housley had said there is my precise understanding of what's happening. Okay. Well, not precise. I think it goes a little bit deeper than that. To me, Christopher Wray, Housley was nice to say, toe the establishment line. It's the deep state line. Christopher Wray is a deep stater. He always has been. He has been one of the reasons why so much that has happened in the FBI has not come out already. When they announced on Friday that he was starting this quote unquote investigation, I look at it more as a counter investigation. He realizes that John Durham, U.S. Attorney, assigned by Attorney General Richard Barr, William Barr, to go after basically start the investigation of the investigators. They are getting close. Things are coming out. And then you have Grinnell, Richard Grinnell, acting DNI, who is unveiling so much, giving more fodder. Then you have Lindsey Graham, who I'm not a big fan of Senator Lindsey Graham, but the Intelligence Committee is going to be voting, I believe it's on June 4th, on to start subpoenaing people regarding this whole thing with Christopher Wray, with the FBI, with James Comey, with Barack Obama, with with Obamagate, with the FISA courts, a lot of this stuff is going to come out, and everybody's on a clock at this point. The clock here is the election. The Republicans want all of this to be able to get wrapped up and come out prior to the election. Christopher Wray, I believe, is basically the left's insurance policy. Okay, maybe not necessarily the Democrats, but at least the deep state. Okay, there are things that we don't know about, and they need it covered up, and he's their guy. This is why I actually called on. Anybody can call on. It's not like I just pick up the phone and say, "Hey, President Trump, I have some thoughts for you." No, I just tweeted it at him. But now with Radcliffe coming in, hey, what's going to happen to Richard Grenell, right? Maybe, I don't know. To me, he might make a good FBI director. So hashtag fire Christopher Wray, hashtag hire Richard Grenell. That's what I would like to see. Bottom line is, yes, Housley is correct on everything. This is the media is being dishonest. They are covering up this. They are taking Obamagate and trying their best to say, oh, no big deal. Oh, they're making a big deal out of it. They're saying, oh, unmaskings happen all the time. This is no big deal. Part of the vast right-wing conspiracy. No, this is a big deal. Obamagate was a very big deal. There were crimes committed against American citizens, specifically motivated by political expediency. And so, yeah, Housley is absolutely correct on this one.
I think it's absolutely fascinating that we're getting more investigative journalism from independent sources like a Laura Logan, a Cheryl Atkinson, and Adam Housley, than you're getting from a lot of places that should be doing their job. And they're not, because, as I like to call them, this is now become deep state run media. They're covering for people, and every time the media and leftists accuse Republicans and conservatives of doing something evil and against the American people, the reason why they're accusing them of doing it and it never comes out that it's happening is because they're projecting. The left is doing it themselves. I can't, JD. I can't. I don't understand why people don't see the science, the facts, the data to say, okay, well, the Republicans they may sell you out at the table of power and sell you down the river and not abide by their stuff. But these people literally want to end your way of life on the other side. The last vestiges of America that are left, there's two warring factions in America. There's left America and what's left of America. And they're warring against each other. I do not want a godless, totalitarian, pagan, leftist regime running this country, because it's a threat to my personal liberties, to human flourishing, to human freedom and liberty and constitutional rights. And just the fact that because of leftist governors, I have to walk into a Walmart with a mask and gloves, and I have to have my cart sanitized just to be able to go get myself some milk. This isn't 1984 East Germany, JD. It's not the Soviet Union. But yet we're being treated like that. You in California, me in New Jersey, and I've had it up to here with it. Did you know it will be quarantine day number 71 in the state of New Jersey?
Sounds about right.
I'm tired of people that are saying, well, we've got to do this. We got to come together. If people would just stay home, we'd get over this. No. The data and the science from 50 different scientific studies, places like Southern California, Stanford, University of Miami, Boston University, LA Public Health, New York City Public Health, Oxford, Harvard, Yale, they're all saying Fauci, Birx, the CDC, Imperial College UK, the IMHE at the University of Washington, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and the WHO, the World Health Organization, have all been lying to you, and they're all wrong. We said before the podcast, how could Anthony Fauci say in the New England Journal of Medicine on February 28th in a published scientific article that there was no reason to be concerned. This is not going to be any worse than the flu. And then he gets up on national TV in a congressional hearing 2 weeks later on March 11th and says this is going to be 10 times worse than the seasonal flu. Whoa! Okay, so what changed in 2 weeks? That is going to be the smoking gun that I think comes out between now and Election Day. Mark it down. Another prediction on the America Held Hostage podcast. I was right about, for people that are watching, I was right about the foreclosures that are starting to come in the business in the business holdings market when it comes to commercial real estate. I was right about the fact, I called it 2 weeks before, that we were going to have food shortages and you were going to see spikes in meat prices. I was also right about the fact that these lockdowns were not going to start lifting until after Memorial Day. Another prediction that you heard it here. We're going to find out that there was some shady dealings that were happening behind the scenes between Robert Redfield, Dr. Birx, Dr. Fauci, the CDC, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, people that are involved in the health side of the deep state, and they took this to try and use it to their advantage and try to punish Trump. And if that comes out, then you combine that with Obamagate and what they did with Flynn and the other unmaskings that are going to come out. This is going to be a perfect storm of BS that the Democrats aren't going to be able to lean Joe Biden up against the jukebox and do weekend at Biden's and get him to the convention and then get him to the election day. He's not going to be able to make it, JD.
As far as whether or not we'll know about it before Election Day, I'm always skeptical about that because we cannot appreciate how powerful these things are. You know, people were saying, when Seth Rich, when all this information finally gets out there, that, this is going to sink Hillary Clinton. This is going to come out long before the election. Okay. This was a simple investigation with very clear evidence that the DNC participated in, or at least was aware of, potentially murder of one of their own operatives who was clearly in contact with WikiLeaks moments before WikiLeaks came out. Okay? This was a slam dunk. This was a no-brainer. There was I heard many people much smarter than me who said, you know what? This is going to come out and this is going to sink Hillary Clinton before the 2016 election. We've got several months before it comes out. Several months before the election, this is going to be the smoking gun that proves just how evil and how corrupt she is.
Same for Jeffrey Epstein. Your daily reminder that Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself.
We are never going to hear what actually happened with Jeffrey Epstein, one of the arguably the highest profile power man pedophile in modern history, who died of obviously suspicious. I mean, he could have had...
The day after a 2,000-page document dumped that said he had ties to Prince Andrew, President Clinton, Ambassador Bill Richardson, and former Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell.
We're not going to find out anything about Jeffrey Epstein, okay? We're not going to... There's not going to be any justice or demonstration of proof regarding Seth Rich. And to me, I don't want to... Listen, to us, it seems obvious that this is an attack on President Trump. This whole coronavirus thing is a draconian effort by people who were tyrants, who now have an excuse to act like tyrants. Okay, it's pretty obvious, right? We are seeing that hydroxychloroquine seems to be effective, and yet there's this war against it. We are seeing that vaccines seem to be impossible, and yet we're being told to wait for them. We can look back at Bill Gates all day. All this is like, as big as all this is, okay? It seems relatively clear what kind of picture we're seeing, and yet I have zero confidence that this is going to come out before the election, that there's going to be any true scandal outside of InfoWars, maybe Breitbart, maybe Gateway Pundit, and a handful of others. Okay, this America Held Hostage podcast. We're going to be the ones talking about this, and CNS, CNBC, MSNBC, CNN, even Fox News. None of them are going to cover it. Do you know why? Because this is above and beyond us. This is more powerful than we could possibly imagine. We think that the most powerful thing that we have is the truth, and at least from a biblical perspective, it is. But here on earth, the truth doesn't always resonate. The truth doesn't always win out. You know, Ephesians 6:12. There are principalities and powers that are, to me, at work with this entire coronavirus plot, this entire coronavirus, whatever you want to call it. And I'm not one that says, I don't think that the coronavirus is a hoax. Okay, I think it's real. Okay?
Right.
I wear a mask sometimes. Right. Sometimes. And obviously I haven't gotten my hair cut. Okay. In a long, long time. I see you have. Lucky man.
Yeah.
Anyway,
because my wife is a stylist, so I get mine done every 2 weeks. Keep her sharp.
What I'm trying to say is that I do not share your confidence that this will come out before the election. I do not believe that it's ever going to come out, because if it does, then that exposes people who are much more powerful and in many ways much more intelligent than we are. So as much as we can hope for and beg for and pray for the truth to prevail, guys, this isn't heaven. Okay. This is the world. And in the world, the prince of lies still reigns. And so, yeah, I think we still have to fight. And I think we have to fight from the perspective of promoting the truth, of promoting conservatism, constitutionalism, Christianity. We have these elements. We stay focused on those. And if heads roll, if conspiracies are proven to be true, if the deep state is ever exposed, if people are brought to justice, great. But somebody was asking me why, I keep tweeting, like, I as much as I like Attorney General Barr and U.S. Attorney Durham, I have zero expectation that anyone is going to be indicted, charged, arrested, or convicted from this. I have zero expectation of that. Not because they shouldn't be, but because, Ephesians 6:12, principalities and powers, rulers in dark places, they're calling the shots in many ways. So we just need to stay faithful and keep fighting the good fight. Okay, keep fighting for conservative values in America. Keep defending the Constitution. Keep calling things out. Keep trying to promote President Trump and conservative Republicans across the board, or even libertarians. Okay, the evil is strong, and we have to fight it.
I would agree. I would completely agree, JD. I think we need to stand boldly without wavering upon the hope that we confess, because he who promised is faithful. Hebrews 10:23. And remember, Ephesians 5:11 says, have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. And that's what we're trying to do. Our victory is not defined by the way we see human victory. Victory is you stand firm when the day of trouble comes, you do everything in love, and then you continue to stand firm when that trouble when the storms of life and those troubles are raging. And
amen, brother.
I think that when it comes to what we're seeing now, am I hopeful that some of this stuff is going to be exposed? Yes, because the darkness, for some reason, is drawn out like cockroaches to try and troll Trump, and he's like a divining rod by God, just sent to troll godless pagans. And that's one of the reasons why I went from never Trump to, wow, I could actually vote for this guy, just because of how much hatred there is for him and that how much shade they throw at him. He's like the Teflon Don. Nothing sticks. Nothing sticks. So why am I hopeful that something is going to come out? Because we were told, we're going to have to wait for a vaccine. That leads me to my last story. You had said it. We were going to have to wait for a vaccine. Jordan Schachtel of Blaze TV Media said the virus is fading so fast that pharmaceutical companies are considering scrapping vaccine trials. It's over. And you talked about this. This came from Oxford. The only thing stopping us from going back to pre-COVID days are politicians, public health experts, and a fear-mongering media. I would completely agree, JD. I mean, holding out
Absolutely.
for a vaccine, they tried to hold out for the first SARS coronavirus. When that occurred and that broke out during the Obama administration, 2009, they tried to create a virus over 18 months. They couldn't do it. Vaccine. They couldn't come out with it. Not a virus.
No,
a vaccine.
China
They-
China tried to create viruses. We tried to create vaccines.
Right,
There you
right. My Amen Corner had to correct me here. We didn't try to
Amen.
create a virus. We tried to create a vaccine. And when it came to the vaccine, after 18 months, we had to scrap it because the virus continued to mutate so much that we couldn't pin ourselves down to be able to create a vaccine like we do with the flu.
No, absolutely. Well, I would say, okay, and if you have some tin foil, okay, we need to go ahead and get that out, because what I'm going to say is very tinfoil hat worthy. I think that, this is number one. The coronavirus doesn't need a vaccine. Okay, the coronavirus does appear to be fading. I've heard many doctors saying that there is not going to be a quote unquote second wave. That's great, but there is an agenda here, an agenda driven by Bill Gates. And I don't know whether he is the ringleader or literally the most useful idiot of all time, but this agenda is going to be pushing for this vaccine. They've said 18 months. This is the number that he has put out there. He spent 4 days going on any program that would have him, and they would all have him because he's a donor to all of them. Any program that would have him, saying that it would take 18 months. After that, a vaccine was offered. Not the vaccine. Experts rather were offered who were saying, yeah, 18 months. You even had President Trump, who during one of his press conferences came out and said, yeah, we expect it should be 13, 14, 15, 16 months. That's a very Trumpian way of saying 18 months. Bottom line is this. I think that they are going to continue to push for this vaccine. Whether, this isn't like SARS-1. Okay, this is something that if every single study out there, every single number shows that the coronavirus is fading, that it's not going to have a second wave or whatever, people are still have been scared enough. Enough money has been put into it. We're talking about billions of dollars put into this across 224 different attempts to create a vaccine. There's enough money that there is going to eventually be a vaccine. I'm not saying it's going to be effective. I'm not saying it's going to be properly tested. 6 of the 10 that are currently in trials are from China. I am not touching those with a 10-foot pole, right? But there will be a vaccine, I believe, in approximately 18 months. Now, what does 18 months mean? Okay, why do they say 18 months? 18 months seems to be an arbitrary number. The reality is that it is a political number. Okay, when you hear anybody say that something's going to happen in 18 months, what they're saying is they don't want to say it's going to happen in approximately a year, because a year sets a time clock that we can imagine. We can visualize what a year is, and it doesn't seem like it's that far off. Whereas if you say 24 months or 2 years, that's too long. Okay, we can't wait for 2 years. 18 months is a very specific number that's used in politics and even in marketing to say, hey, it's around the corner, but don't start your clock yet. It's coming, but it's not too far away, but it's not near enough to where we have to be starting to get antsy about it. That's what the 18 months means. They are going to come out with a vaccine. I don't think it's going to take 18 months. I think it's going to take probably 6 or 7 months, maybe 8. There will be a vaccine that comes out. It's going to be quote unquote tested. It's going to be distributed. They're going to figure out how to get it out to the people. And that's when we start to get into the real conspiracy theories about how it's going to be delivered. They're talking about now, oddly, this micro dot that acts as both the vaccination itself, as well as the vaccination delivery system, as well as the proof that you have been vaccinated. Okay, so you show them these micro dots. They scan it. It's the most Orwellian / Bill Gatesian thing that I've ever heard, and this is what they're pushing. So, long story short, I don't want to bore everybody with my conspiracy theories, but yeah, The coronavirus is going to die away, but vaccine mania will never die away, not until it's out there.
JD, I think that what you're saying is spot on, because when it comes to these vaccines that we're trying to have pushed to us, I wonder what the end game is to all of this and if it's going to be mandated. So,
Oh, I'm sure.
and then at that point, is that a digital mark that we're going to have to make a decision to flee to the mountains and eat the grass and shrubs and, live in Montana because, hey, I'm not gonna take that mark anymore, you godless pagan heathens.
Montana land is very, very inexpensive. Lots of great homes there. We've already checked them out. I'm not kidding.
All right. Well, take that as a word of warning, people. Word of warning. There could be trouble on the horizon, so be prepared. So, as we finish up, JD, had a funny tweet from Andrew Wilkow of Blaze Media. Said, breaking news! 17 people died in Chicago last week from COVID-19 related gunshot wounds. They will be voting by mail this fall. All registered Democrats.
Yeah,
Spot on.
It's
Spot
hilarious. Yeah, I would be laughing even harder if it wasn't so sad.
When it comes to stories like what you just said, it reminds me of this prayer from the late Jerry Stiller, otherwise known as George Costanza's dad.
Serenity now!
We need some serenity right now, JD.
Thank you very much.
When we're counting COVID-19 deaths, when it comes to people with gunshot wounds, that's fraud. It's evil. It's wickedness in the high places. I don't understand. No, I can. These people are devoid from truth. They have unhinged themselves from anything that is remotely adhering to the truth. These are people who think that two men having anal sex in a bathroom is holy marriage. These are people that believe that you can choose your race, that you can choose your gender, that you can choose, that you can transition to not only be a man to a woman, but now I heard there's people that think that they're dogs or horses or sheeps or goats. And Facebook thinks that you have 56 genders. So when you've unhinged yourself from truth, then why are we surprised that Scripture says they're doing what is right in their own eyes? They have become their own gods. They have, they've decided, just like Lucifer, I will ascend the Most High. I will be like God. And that's what we're doing on this fallen plane when it comes to people that have bought into the pagan, progressive, panic, fear porn. That's how I call it. That they've bought into this mentality. People that we saw today when we were out shopping, that they're Karens. You're not wearing your mask all over. Well, it's my choice. I don't have to wear it over my nose. It's my silent protest. Well, you shouldn't be allowed to shop. Well, maybe you should just mind your own business. And I say that with all the love, grace, and mercy of Jesus Christ. But it's not your role to tell me how to live my life. I thought you people told us it was my body, my choice. With that being said, we need to remember my closing commentary for the America Held Hostage podcast. In Scripture, if you read the book of Nehemiah, you're reminded that Nehemiah had to go back to his father's place, Jerusalem, the land of his fathers, and he had to rebuild the walls of a once great civilization because the walls around Jerusalem had been destroyed. Now, he was in exile. He had to ask the king to be able to go back. And when he went there were people there that were thorns in his side. They were a pain in his craw. Who were they? Sanballat and Tobiah. And these were people that mocked what he was doing. Why are you rebuilding this? Why are you wasting time? And you read in the book of Nehemiah that he told the people to grab a sword in one hand and a hammer in the other. The hammer was to rebuild the walls of a once great civilization, a once great people. The sword was to fight off the pagans that were going to try and keep you from the work that you had to do, that God wanted you to do. And am I advocating for violence? No, but I am saying you need to push back against this spirit of the age. And you need to be able to cite studies. You need to be prepared to give a reasoned defense for the hope that is within you, but do it with gentleness and respect. But do not let these people bully you around and say, well, you're just saying this because you're a Trumper. Well, you're just saying this because you're a Christian. Well, you're just saying this because you believe the Bible. No, I'm not afraid of truth because Jesus said, everyone on the side of truth listens to me. That's John 18:37. We are people of truth who walk in the truth, who are guided by the truth, who are led by the Spirit of truth. And we need to realize that there are going to be plenty of Sanballats and Tobias that come across our path in this day and age that are going to try and demoralize us, that are going to try and steal our joy. And we need to say, no, I'm going to rebuild the walls. I'm going to stand for truth. And maybe we can be so blessed that at the end of our story, we stand up like a Nehemiah at the end of the book. And he says, I beat these pagans and plucked out their beards. Remember me, God, for what I've done for you. Because that could be a message that could preach in a post-Christian America, in a wussified church that needs more men with scrotes in the pulpits and the pews. JD, it was great having you on the podcast. At JD Rucker on Twitter, Google American Conservative Movement. You can also look for Knock Report, NOQreport.com. He's the editor-in-chief over there. Great website. And also look for us on the Freedom First Network as well, as we're going to continue to churn out more content in the days and weeks to come. JD will be back with us now as a regular contributor to the podcast. We're glad that he was able to join us today. A happy Memorial Day. Remember that the people who died that we celebrate throughout the centuries, that died for the last 246 years of American history, they did so that you could partake in the freedoms and liberties that are trying to be dismantled at this point in American history. Do not let those liberties be dismantled. They didn't die to cower in fear over bat poop. They died so that you could live as free men. Because as the Patriot founders told us, we have no king but Jesus. Live free or die. New Hampshire's state motto is right. And give me liberty or give me death. So for JD Rucker, I'm John Hinton. Follow me at jhinton_ on Twitter. And go to Freedom First Network on Facebook. Until next time, that's the way it should be. Colossians 2:8.
Hey, this is Jeff Dornick, co-founder of the American Conservative Movement. Mark your calendars for Saturday, May 30th, as we'll be doing our third edition of the Saving America Conference, which will be streaming live on our Facebook page. Past speakers have included Pastor Greg Locke, Joshua Fierstein, Mindy Robinson, Andy Cyrus, Trevor Loudon, and so many more amazing conservative speakers. We've been averaging about 25,000 viewers per conference, and I hope that you'll join us for this next one. For more information, go to AmericanConservativeMovement.com, and we'll see you for the Saving America Conference on Saturday, May 30th on the ACM Facebook page.